everybody, welcome back to another episode of Hot Take, and this episode is going to be a bit spicy. I mean, they all are kind of spicy, but this one's going to be a little more so. And what are we talking about? We're talking about the trans issue in this episode, and here's the deal. I'm gonna preface this with two things. First off, this is a sensitive topic to a lot of people. I understand that. If you are easily offended or if you are very sensitive to this topic, I recommend you just walk away now. I will have no hard feelings if I have one less view. It's not, you know what? Let the chips fall where they may. Number two, none of this is coming from hate. I do not hate people. I have trans friends. I know trans people. I respect them. I do not hate trans people. I am not transphobic, whatever the hell that means. Phobia has nothing to do with it. There are things I just disagree with from a societal and social perspective. That being said, I do have some beliefs that are in conflict with this quote-unquote trans rights issue, which I think trans rights is a stupid term, and I'll get into why. But so, that being said, none of this is coming from hate. None of this is coming from not recognizing that they exist or that they're valid or that they're deserving of respect. That is not true whatsoever. Every human being is deserving of respect. Every human being is deserving of recognition and validity as a person. Some do things that remove that, like if you're, a rapist or a murderer. But anyway, so that out of the way, how's this going to work? I'm going to address this. I'm gonna bring out three main points. I'm going to dive into those three main points and expound upon them, and then summarize and conclude. And I will say that this is not coming from hate. So I welcome any disagreement. You are free to disagree, but if you're disrespectful, I don't normally do this, but on this, if you're disrespectful or, hurl false accusations of, bigot, transphobic, hateful, whatever, I'm not going to entertain that. Those comments will be deleted. I know. But hey, here we are. So, to preface, I'm not and this there will be some tie-ins to recent events, such as Donald Trump becoming the president-elect. That I will tie into some of that, and I will also third preface. I'm not a MAGA Republican. I am a right/conservative leaning libertarian, kind of like Mises Caucus and that vein. I have a lot of shared beliefs with conservatism, but I am predominantly libertarian. So that is the preface there. I'm not saying these things praising Trump or anything like that. Give credit where credit is due, but also I will criticize when it is deserved. So that being said, let's get into this. So my three main points here. And I will expound upon these, so don't just jump the gun. First point is kids should not be allowed to transition prior to adulthood due to their inability to recognize and rationalize the long-term repercussions and consequences of that decision. And also, puberty blockers are not reversible. I will get into this, so yeah. And then kind of a second part to that is I also think it absolutely should be illegal for teachers or any government employees or any figures of, by the state to keep a secret from parents that a child is quote unquote trans. So I'm going to expand on this, but that's point one. Point two, and I will expand on this one too. Biological men should not be allowed to compete in women's sports. That's the second point. And then the third point, this one's a little testy. Once an adult, yes, you should be allowed to live how you want and do to your body whatever you want, as long as it hurts no one else, but you cannot demand others recognize your individual beliefs or police their language. And I will expand on this. So don't jump on it yet. We're gonna get there. So buckle up. Let's get into this. Point one. So kids, I think children, and I quantify this with under the age of 18. Even though it is this common thing, we have this kind of lax definition of youth and adolescence and adulthood. I really, where do we draw the line? Because the goalposts move so much. Like when you're 18, you're legally an adult and you can make those adult decisions. I guess I agree with that, only because society deems it that way. However, then they say this whole well, but they can't drink and can't legally purchase a pistol and can't get a concealed carry permit in states that offer it that way. And all these other things that we put the barrier at 18, but then another barrier at 21, where it's kind of like you're an adult, but you're like 2/3 of an adult. You're like 75% adult at 18, and then you hit 21 and you're 100% adult. That I just think that whole premise I think is absurd. We should have one strict limit what point you reach quote unquote adulthood to be able to make your own decisions for your own life, whether that be alcohol, tobacco, I won't get into it, but drugs. From the legal standpoint, I think that there's a lot of decriminalization that needs to go on with drugs, but that's another conversation for another day. But this whole idea of adulthood is very kind of vaguely defined. But in terms of trans issues, I think under 18 you should not be allowed to transition because of, and here's the deal, even, and it's even questionable at 18 because they say your brain is not fully developed until roughly about 25. And I know that's kind of a loosey-goosey because there are people who mature quicker, people who mature slower. I know 28-year-olds who show signs that their brain is not fully developed. And I know 19-year-olds who show signs that their brain is fully developed and they're wicked smart. But I digress. The whole thing is that they lack the capability to actually recognize and rationalize these long-term repercussions and consequences to these actions of transitioning at a young age. And let's not try and beat around the bush here. A lot of times these children are not making that decision independently on their own. It's not like there are not any outside factors that are playing a part, whether it be parents, teachers, society, mass media, social media, whatever outside factors that are contributing to this decision to for a young person to transition, to change to a different gender identity. And then there's all the myriad of in between, that the whole absurdist, non-binary, I think is, look, it's not out of disrespect. It's not out of hate. I just find the whole non-binary thing really kind of ridiculous. But the children transitioning, I think it's just no. And the fact of the matter is, in society in general, if you remember back when you were a child, I remember at one point when I was a kid, probably 6 or 7, I wanted to be a ninja. I legitimately wanted to be a ninja. I wanted to go jumping from rooftop to rooftop and, doing ninja stuff. I won't get into what actually ninja stuff entails because I got pretty educated on that stuff at a really young age, probably too young of an age as I should have. I was at one point obsessed with the feudal Japanese culture and all that, and I read tons of books and I got really excited. I was like, I want to be a samurai, I want to be a ninja and do all this cool stuff. And I recognize what a ninja's job is. I won't, if you know, I won't get into it, but I knew what ninjas do for a living, that what their whole purpose is. I recognize that. As a kid, I wanted to do that. So that's just pointing out the absurdity of children's mental state. You know, there are kids who claim that they're a dinosaur. Do we say, okay, well, we're gonna surgically alter your arms to be, you know, a foot long so you can be T-Rex, and we're gonna take out all your teeth and put in really sharp teeth so you can go fight Triceratops and eat meat raw like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. No, you don't entertain that idea. If a kid came to you and said, I want to be an elephant, are you going to put a trunk on them and let them go wallow in a mud puddle and eat leaves? No. So that's kind of an absurdist take, but that's kind of showing the mind state of children. So, no. And the decision being made by these kids at that young age, not being theirs. Look, everyone listening should have gone through puberty at some point in their life, right? We're all grown adults here. What was that like for you? I will tell you from personal experience and experience from others, going through puberty, your emotions are all over the place. Your hormones are bouncing off the walls. You are confused. You're going through these changes. You're emotionally compromised. All these things are going on. And kids, when they're going through puberty and their hormones are like just blowing up, they are straight up like very impressionable. You are seeking, you know, belonging, this sense of self-worth, this whole idea of you want to fit in, you want to be recognized, you want to be validated, you want to be a part of something, and the whole trans identity thing just feeds into that. And whether people recognize it or not, teachers, society, social media, politicians, etc., whether it's from ignorance or malice, a lot of times I do think it's from malice, recognize that, feed into that, and they say, you know, little Johnny here wants to become Susie, and if we recognize his, you know, we validate his new trans identity and ideology, we're validating him. You pour on all this attention, this positive attention that they are craving at that age, and that is extremely destructive, and that is very influential to them. So impressionable kids are very impressionable, and that is the problem. That is why I think it should be. I'm not one to advocate for more laws, you know, being small government libertarian belief, but this is one thing I think it should be illegal to transition kids. Now, on that topic, puberty blockers. And I really wrestled. This is why I did not support Chase Oliver for the Libertarian ticket for president. His stance on this is infuriating, and this is why I'm actually I kind of giggle that he got less than 1% of the vote. So deservedly so. He didn't even campaign, but that's another talk for another time. But good Lord, he came out years ago and said puberty blockers are reversible, and that is absolute bullshit. Puberty blockers are not reversible. It's not like a light switch. You can't just go, okay, we're gonna pause at age 9 or 10 or 11, whatever. We're gonna pause this perfectly natural developmental process in your biology to allow you to become something that you're not, and then if you decide later, like 17, you actually don't want to do that anymore, we could just hit the switch, turn it back on, and you'll be just fine. That is not how that works. And any doctor that that tells you that is how that works should not be practicing medicine. They should lose their license to practice medicine and be laughed out of the office, hospital, wherever they are, clinic, what have you. They should be laughed out of there because that is absurd. No, they are absolutely not reversible, and it's like this. I will ruffle feathers here, and it's not out of hatred. Again, see my preface at the beginning. If you need to rewind and hear it again, this is not out of hatred or disrespect, but Men cannot get pregnant. Women cannot impregnate other women. Period. Don't put trans in front of it. No. Men and women, two completely different genders, different sexes. Men cannot get pregnant. Women can get pregnant. Women cannot impregnate other women. Only men can. There's biological realities, and I don't care where a human technology and scientific endeavor takes us years from now. Biologically speaking, from that, it's not physically, biologically possible, and anyone that tells you that it is just fooling themselves, and they're absurd and should not be taken seriously. So, no. The whole trans thing boils down to, and I will say this in my conclusion, but I've got to say it now, men cannot become women, and women cannot become men. It's not like just taking the clay and remolding it. That's not how it works. And look, I know if some people believe that they are the opposite gender, okay, that's fair. You are free to believe that, but science disagrees. So there's that. And then finally, on the legal aspect, I think it should absolutely be illegal for a teacher, government official, public official, politician, anything, any government entity to keep a secret from parents that their child is quote unquote trans. As a parent, I will go to the mattresses on this. My kid will never go to a public school, but if this were to ever happen and they were to keep it secret, you bet your ass I would be fighting that teacher, tooth and nail. If I ever found out they were keeping this secret, that my child was living a secret life at school separate from home, and that the teacher was in on it and deemed it appropriate to keep that secret from me and from my wife. I will lawsuit against everybody. I would go after the teacher. I'd go after all their assets. It would be full legal warfare. I think this should absolutely be illegal. And I think any teacher that does that should be immediately jailed and never allowed to teach ever again. Period. And I say that as an educator myself. So, there's that. All right, moving on. Point 2. Biological men should not be allowed to compete in women's sports. This one's pretty controversial with some people. They're like, and let me quantify what I mean by this. Biological men, meaning you were born a male. I'm not playing this game of assigned male at birth or whatever malarkey you want to use. No, it's if you were born a male, you were a biological male, you should not be allowed to compete in women's sports. And I kind of view the opposite, even though it's not really happening. There's some outlying cases, but biological women competing in men's sports doesn't really happen. But there are cases of trans males, biological women who transition to try and become men that are forced to compete in women's sports, and they dominate because the testosterone has been introduced. That's the crux there. But if you don't view a biological and physical difference between men and women, you're fooling yourself and you're denying science. There is a rudimentary biological difference between men and women. What do I mean by that? It is a biological fact, and any doctor who disagrees with this, I will challenge you we can talk about this. On the whole, and this is generalization. This is not, I know that there are different, I have one of my wife's friends, she's Scandinavian descent. She's a big woman. I'm not saying she's fat. No, she's tall, she's broad, she's stout. She is a strong woman, that probably could take on a lot of smaller, men. And in like combat sports, I know I recognize that exists. Okay. I'm saying in general, men biologically and physically are different than women. Men have greater bone density. We have greater propensity for muscle development, fast twitch muscle fibers. Men have greater lung capacity, bigger hearts, able to pump blood because men are a more physically imposing of the two. There is a difference. I mean, like you look at a lot of species do this differentiation between the male and female. Some species, the males are bigger, stronger, more like strongly built than women, than the females. The females in some species are smaller, more petite, and less strong. And then vice versa, opposite in some cases, the women are the females. Sorry, the female of that species are the bigger, stronger, better hunters. But in the human species, in our species, men are typically bigger, stronger, tougher, more physically adept. So men competing in women's sports, I disagree completely with that idea. It's popularized in a lot of culture, so I will bring it up here. I will say that like that whole Leah Thomas thing, it's a perfect example. Before Leah Thomas became a quote unquote woman, he was not. And yes, I'm going to misuse pronouns, and I don't care, because it's biological fact. I'm not, and I'll address it in point 3. But he was very not highly ranked. I can't remember exactly where he was ranked when he was a male swimmer, but not very high. He was not like this overachiever that was bringing home championships and winning a lot of meets. But Leah Thomas, when he was a male swimmer, was like, lower half or whatever of the swimming community. Then transitions and didn't do a whole lot. If you look at what Riley Gaines has said about Leah Thomas, he still has a penis, still has the male parts, didn't really grew hair out. Maybe I don't know the full spectrum here, but maybe took some hormones, whatever. But still looks pretty male. You can't deny that. And goes into women's swimming and just absolutely dominates. Like, that is, come on. Like, I think that is wrong. And I won't get into the whole bathroom issue because I will say this. Virginia, there was a very high profile case of this. I'm not in favor, especially in adolescence, and youth and pre-adult. I am not okay with boys using the girls' bathrooms, especially in schools. But I'm not getting into that. However, in women's sports, men should not be allowed to compete. There's the forgive me, I can't remember the name. But there's a male UFC fighter that got in and absolutely wrecked and almost, I think, killed or almost killed a girl fighting. I disagree with that. The Imane Khalif thing from the 2024 Paris Olympics, that whole controversy, I'm 100 in agreement. I think Imane Khalif should not have been allowed to compete in women's boxing. And yes, there's evidence now that has come to light that is a biological male. So, yeah, no, that shouldn't be allowed. I think biological men should not be allowed to compete in women's sports. Feel free to disagree with me if you want, but I am steadfast in that one, especially being the father of a girl. I want her to have every advantage against her own sex and not have to worry about some boy coming in and absolutely dominating over everybody because of the physical differences between men and women. And if you refuse to believe there are physical differences, I don't care if you pump them full of estrogen. You can't change some of those rudimentary biological differences cannot just be undone by introducing hormones. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. And 1,000 years from now, when they dig up your skeleton, anthropologists will look at your skeletal remains and be able to identify if you were male or female. And if you're trans, they won't know, they won't care. They'll go, this was a male, even if it was I don't know, Leah Thomas or whoever else, insert famous trans person here. All right, moving on. Finally, point 3. As I said, once you're an adult, yes, you should be allowed to live how you want and do to your body whatever you want, as long as it harms no one else. That's the key there. However, you cannot demand others recognize your beliefs or police their language. I stand fast on this one, because freedom of speech does not mean you are free to not be offended. And I can disagree with anybody, and you cannot. There should not be any legal or government repercussions for that. And I also I don't think there should be any laws on this, but the whole cancel thing, I think is kind of shitty. Like, if I come out and say biological men can never become biological women, like a male cannot become a woman, period. I get it. You've got all these famous Blair White, for instance. To a degree, I will respect Blair White as being a trans person and his decision to transition, whatever, and live partially, wholly, whatever, as a woman. I respect their decision. I won't acknowledge that he is a biological woman. And to a degree, I try to go out of my way. Sometimes, like pronouns, I'll try. If it's coming from a place of respect, and if there's a mutual respect, like Leah Thomas, I don't respect, because I view the whole thing as kind of malicious. Whereas Blair White isn't going into women's spaces and demanding, this recognition and this kind of like acceptance. Like, she says, like, okay, whatever, but recognizing your beliefs, it kind of goes with religion, because I'm a Christian, and I recognize there are people who are atheist or agnostic or Buddhist or Muslim or Jewish or whatever. I don't force my beliefs on them. I don't demand that they recognize my beliefs as valid. I won't say, like, okay, yeah, you believe in Allah, I believe in the Christian God. If you don't recognize my beliefs, okay. I don't want to force that. I don't want to demand that a Buddhist person recognize, or an atheist, because let's be honest, a lot of atheists I've discussed this with love to belittle Christian beliefs, and a lot of Christians are very callous towards atheists. I think that's not the way it should be. But like, forcing your beliefs on someone else, or forcing someone else to recognize your beliefs, I think is inherently wrong. We should all have universal beliefs, like people in general should be respected. Basic human rights. This idea of trans rights, which somehow now makes them separate and apart from everybody else, I think is kind of absurd. We all have rights. We all have, we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. However, you can't, that whole idea of my rights end at the tip of your nose. I would never demand somebody else recognize my beliefs. I would ask respectfully that you respect I have different beliefs, and I respect that you have different beliefs, but I'm not going to play like the idea. I will not acknowledge a non-biological reality as fact. Like, I will not say that, there's a local politician where I live, Breonna Tattone. I will not recognize that Breonna Tattone is a female, is a woman. It's she. I will try and respect the pronoun thing. It's hard for me, but I do it not to placate or acknowledge or recognize the I don't want to call it delusion, because that is disrespectful, but it is kind of delusional. But I will use pronouns appropriate if I can, It's not out of malice when I don't. But like Breonna Tattone is a politician here in Colorado that is trans, and I will never acknowledge or recognize that she is a woman, trans woman, whatever. She was born a man, will always be a man, will die a man, but is a that identifies as trans, as a woman. And look, I respect her right to exist, her right to live the life she wants to live. By all means, go do it. I will not I will not kowtow to the demand of playing into the delusion. I will not say yes. I will use pronouns, whatever pronouns you want to use. I mean, within reason. There's some people who take the pronoun thing a little too far, and I think we should stop that. But with the pronouns, like, if you say, I identify as trans woman, please call me she, her, to an extent, I will try to respectfully do that because it doesn't hurt me. And I'll call her Brianna, whatever her, I don't like the term dead name, but whatever the birth name is, I won't go out of my way to, like Leah Thomas, I will not go out of my way to say his name is William. If he wants to go by Leah, that is his choice. Cool. If my neighbor's kid wants to go by the name Thor, he could totally do that. That's perfectly fair for me to acknowledge that. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't diminish my position as a male of the species to recognize whatever. However, then going further, the policing of language, where you demand that if someone misgenders someone, they need to be prosecuted. I do not agree with that at all. And I feel like that whole getting into the cancel culture thing, if someone misuses pronouns and you get offended, like, it's really famous. I'm sure people remember it, the GameStop incident a few years ago, where the guy went in there, clearly trans, and the employee kept calling him sir, and he gets all mad and says, "It is ma'am," in a clearly masculine voice. Like, I'm sorry, but I wanted to be there just so I could be like, when he said, do I look like a ma'am to you, or do I look like a sir to you? Be like, yeah, motherfucker, you do. Sorry, but I don't mean it disrespectful towards that community, but it is kind of funny because it's like, yeah, don't ask a question if you're not prepared to get an answer you won't like. But that being said, the whole scene playing out, I'm pretty sure that person complained to GameStop corporate, and that employee likely got fired. And I disagree with that. It was an honest mistake. It's like there's this social media person that kind of looks like, who's the guy that plays Arliss in that old HBO show? I know I'm showing my age, but there's this actor. He was in the original Tim Burton Batman, and there's this trans person that kind of looks like him with long hair and makeup, and it's trans, but like always posts these videos, and I know it's like this fucking pathetic attention-seeking behavior and validation, but like, people misgender this person. They call him sir, and he's like, "Oh, you have no idea how deep that cuts me, how much that hurts to be misgendered." And it's like, I know why you're doing this, and I'm sorry, but you're seeking validation and attention, and it's like, a lot of times these people don't do it out of malice. It's just that society for thousands of years has been conditioned to recognizing biological realities, and then the last 10 years or so, shit's been flipped on its head, and you've got these fucking people going out that look like men with wigs and long hair and makeup and dresses, and I'm supposed to just automatically snap my fingers and be like, "I will call you by the correct pronouns." doesn't work that way in the real world. And it's not out of disrespect a lot of times. I won't say all the time, because there are times where it is. Like, people will go out of their way to disrespect. But I've had it happen. I used to work in law enforcement, and I've dealt with trans people before, and caught myself like, sir, I apologize. Ma'am. You want to be called ma'am. And it's like, forgive me, but this is the way humanity has existed up until 5 minutes ago. So it's a lot of times, don't take it out of context. Don't take it as intentionally abusive and all that. And stop policing people's languages. If I want to say, I will not recognize you as a woman, and I won't recognize your pronouns. Of course, that's not me personally. I would do my best to try and respect someone's, desire to be called whatever they want to be called. I won't say, yes, you're a woman, but I will go as far as saying, okay, I'll call you she, her, whatever. But to demand that these people be subjected to prosecution or negative effects or ostracization or being fired from their jobs, that alone right there, just, if a waiter misgenders you and you demand they be fired, no due respect, fuck you. Period. Yeah, pardon my language, but fuck you. That is bullshit. Especially if it's unintentional. Now, if they're intentionally doing it and to belittle and disrespect you, that should be dealt with. That we could have that conversation, and we should, perhaps they should be fired. But if their job deems it, but just saying, like, if I make a mistake, like if I'm a bartender, which I did in a previous life, if I'm tending bar and I accidentally call a trans person sir, and they want to be called ma'am, and they demand to be fired, and I didn't do it out of malice or intentionally to cause emotional harm to them, demanding I be fired is pretty disrespectful. And sorry, but I'm done respecting you or your pronouns after that point, because you've just disrespected me when it was not intentional. And that's the thing. We need to get into this legal idea of intent, because a lot of people fail to recognize that absent intent, if it's something as minuscule as misgendering, intentional misgendering, one thing, like, I don't think should be a prosecutorial endeavor or issue. But unintentional misgendering absolutely should never fall into the realm of criminality. And even if it is intentional, so what? Like, oh my gosh, does it kill you? Well, okay, I didn't want to touch on this, but it might just, but the whole 42% thing. But really, like, to kind of wrap this one up, policing language, I think, is absolutely wrong. So, to kind of summarize all of this, one, I don't think kids should be allowed to transition. It should not be allowable to transition them. There's a lot of harm that can be done in that. Also, there's the statistic that it's something like 90% of kids that are not allowed to transition grow out of it. So, that should be recognized. Two, biological men should not be allowed to compete in women's sports. I think a lot of people can kind of agree with that. And on that issue, I do have one question. Where are the feminists on this? This is a male invading a woman's space. Are you okay with that? Like, how are women okay with that? I know the women in my life are, like, completely like, no, this is not okay. Like, Caitlyn Jenner being named Woman of the Year or whatever. That is a man invading a woman's space and getting recognition for achievement as a woman who is not a woman. I don't understand. Like, clown world. Like, put on your clown shoes, man. And then 3, you should be allowed to do what you want, live how you want, whatever, as long as it doesn't harm someone else. But don't demand we fall into that belief, that we recognize your beliefs as valid, as real, as, you know, like, if you demand that I recognize that a trans woman can get pregnant even though they were born a man, I'm going to tell you no. And you can't convince me otherwise. You can't demand that I recognize otherwise, because that's like saying that, you know, that saying that the Earth isn't orbiting around the sun. Like, that's just denying a basic fact. Or that, you know, water isn't hydrogen and oxygen. Like, it's like, no. And then also the policing of language. I kind of beat that to death, but you cannot. I think it's immoral and wrong to police people's language. So, in conclusion, I hope this sparked some thinking. I hope presented some arguments that might make you think a little bit. But really, I mean, like, that is where I stand on the trans issue. I respect trans people for their right to exist. I don't think that they should get any extra special rights. As far as the LGBTQI plus AA, whatever alphabet soup they want to call it these days, community, I respect them. I respect their right to exist, their right to, you know, live the life that they want to live. On the gay marriage thing, because it's kind of somewhat related, I think marry who you want. If you're two consenting adults, you can get married. Go for it. I'm not going to get into the weird, absurd stuff like the interspecies or whatever. But, you know, what an adult does with respect to themselves is their decision. As long as they're not harming anyone else. And I know I've hit the whole, abortion issue earlier. Go back and watch that one if you're interested. But I think that, yeah, people should be allowed to live the lives they want, but you can't demand other people feed into a belief that you have that they may disagree with. So there you have it. This has been Hot Take. I appreciate you tuning in. Like, subscribe. If you want more content, I welcome all comments. I would love to, you know, whether you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, hopefully this doesn't get pulled off of YouTube because it's such a sensitive topic. This is something you could never discuss on Reddit. I've tried and I've gotten a timeout on that one, and it's like unbelievable because I say it's not from a position of hate, but they view it as such. It's not from hate. I don't hate people. I hate individuals. Like, I will say that there's individual people that I really do not like. But in terms of a community or a general label of something, I do not hate. So this is not from a place of hate. It's just me presenting an argument from logic, from my perspective. And I appreciate you tuning in. And I will catch you all in the next one. Thank you for watching.